Welcome back to your weekly roundup of everything that happened in Zenless Zone 0, where we will cover everything that happened inside and outside of the game. This week, we're all in on the Trigger hype train, as we prepare for the second half of patch 1.6. But first things first though, this is your friendly reminder that it is the last day of March. Can you believe it? A quarter of the year has already gone by. But that means that all of the monthly shops will be resetting. So that means the resources and roles over at Scott Outpost, as well as the discounted roles in the Signal shop and the A ranks will also be rotating. So be sure to double check and buy anything you need if you haven't already. But then on Wednesday, the 2nd of April, that is when everything goes down. The Soldier Anby and Bernice banners will be switching out for Triggers as well as Shu Yen's rerun banners, and alongside them both will be Lucy and Billy as the A ranks. Hopefully you've been pre-farming in preparation for these new agents, and as a reminder, aside from the usual stuff, to upgrade Trigger's core passive, she will need the Dead End Butcher Notorious Hunt drop and the new Lumberjack Expert Challenge drop. If you'd like to know more about Trigger and her kit or how you should build her, I do have a video that you can watch after this one. But the new banners aren't the only thing we'll be getting on Wednesday though, as we will also be getting Trigger's agent story, giving us some insight into how Phaethon and Trigger actually met in the past. Along with the agent story though, there will also be Trigger's TV schedule, which provides more trial stages to test her out in. And on top of all of this, there will also be the 0-point calibration event, where you can take Trigger to the shooting range in a definitely not Nikke-inspired mode, where you shoot at targets from a very specific viewing angle. Otherwise, a new login event will also begin on Wednesday, and that is the Enna Into Your Lap event, where logging in for 7 days will earn you 10 Boopons. But the most important event on Wednesday though is one featuring none other than the real star of the show, Corrin. And that is the Virtual World Battlestorm event, where each day there will be a new trial stage over at the HIA VR system with some trial agents available for you to test out. Otherwise, later on Friday we have the regularly scheduled Deadly Assault reset. This time the bosses will see the return of the Notorious Marionettes, which will be joined by the Typhon, which is the triple parry boss, and then lastly the notorious red version of Pompeii. But that is it for in-game news. As mentioned, save the date for Wednesday, but remember that depending on which server you are on, the banner will come out at a different time. Asia server will get it first, then the EU server, and then lastly the Americas server. Speaking of, I'll be streaming my own trigger pulls on Wednesday, the moment the banner drops on the America server. So if you want to see what it's like to have insane luck, then come on by. Otherwise, on to the social media side of things. We have a Trigger promotional video that was released showing her helping out a little girl, all the while dealing with a whole bunch of bad guys. To go alongside this, there's also a Twitter repost event, where as usual, by following the official Zenless Zone 0 account on Twitter and reposting the linked tweet down in the description, you stand a chance to win a double-sided acrylic charm. Unfortunately though, that was it for the Trigger videos. We have yet to see if there will be a music video for her. I know Anby didn't get one, but maybe you could argue that it's because Anby isn't really a quote-unquote new character. But honestly, I'll be a little bit disappointed if there isn't a song for Trigger. But with it being the end of March though, that means that of course, April 1st, aka April Fool's Day, is on Tuesday. So just keep in mind that if you happen to see any new posts or reveals, even if they are from official Zenless Zone 0 accounts, take them with a grain of salt. Like, who knows, maybe there'll be an announcement that would actually be really exciting to see, only to then see that it is just a joke. Could you imagine announcing Zenless Zone 0 like, now in VR, become the proxy yourself, only to realize that it's just a joke? Or maybe a slightly more realistic thing would be something like them announcing an Xbox release, which would be cool, considering that Genshin Impact is now available on Xbox 2, only to then realize that it's a fake announcement. But thankfully, at least the Trigger banner isn't on April Fools, otherwise we would all be the fools after losing a 50-50 to Nekomata. But lastly though, we move on to the speculation zone. And this one, you'll have to bear with me for a second, because it's not necessarily directly related to Zenless Zone 0, but it is instead about another MiHoYo game, and that is Honkai Star Rail. The reason why I bring this up though is because we can clearly see that there are game design aspects being shared across the various MiHoYo games. So what happens in one game could be an indication of something coming to another game. For example, Zenless Zone 0 had Elfie, where you could pick a main stat on discs, and then that was added into Genshin Impact. But coming back to Honkai Star Rail though, in the recent patch 3.2 livestream, there were two pretty big announcements. The first, which wasn't too concerning, is that 5 of the limited characters have been made somewhat available for all players. 2 of them have been added to a special shop where you can use an in-game item called a Golden Companion Spirit to get one of these characters. Everyone in Honkai Star Rail is getting one of these tickets for free, which is cool, but the only other way to get these tickets is pretty much to either whale or have really bad luck. So you can either buy one of these tickets by simply using paid currency, so again the whale strat, or by exchanging 2 silver companion spirits for a gold one. And the only way you get these silver tickets is by getting a duplicate 5-star or S-rank agent while already having them fully maxed out on Mindscapes, or Eidolons in Star-Rail's case. And then as for the other 3 limited characters, these have sort of been added as one of the potential losses that you could get when you lose the 50-50 on a featured banner. Of course, I'm heavily simplifying this, but the TLDR is that limited characters are now becoming available again without it being a rerun. This means that maybe down the line it could be possible that similar things happen in Zenless Zone Zero, where systems are implemented allowing you to be able to get older units without having to wait for a rerun. Again, it'll probably be a little bit whale-centric, where you need to either buy it or get many dupes of an S-rank character, but we will see how generous miHoYo are with those free tickets that they are handing out. The other big thing happening in Honkai Star Rail, which is much scarier to think about, is that one of the new characters, Costeris, has a special global passive that gets applied to all teams by simply pulling for her and having her on your account. You don't even need to have her in the team. Now, this passive is actually a pretty simple one. It's 1 free revive per battle, which may not seem like much to some people, but this is a first of its kind in any miHoYo game. And it may not be the last. And that's the scary thing. So honestly, this specific global passive doesn't seem that bad, but the fact that it is essentially paywalled behind a gacha character has many people concerned. Because if this becomes a new norm, what if there is a character down the line that has an actual impactful buff, like say, I don't know, increasing your team's damage by 25%, and that is without even taking up a team slot because of its a global passive. Now you could argue that you could simply not pull for them, and you'd be right. But what if the devs balance content around the expectation that people have this global passive on top of having a fully built strong team? And that is where things get dicey. And honestly, I could see something similar happening in Zenless Zone Zero, although I would hope that it gets implemented differently. Again, it's not an issue about global passives being a thing, it's about the fact that it is tied to a gacha character. So for example, one way that this could be implemented in Zenless Zone Zero without it being a big issue is, imagine for example, Phaethon gets their powers back through story-related quests, and that unlocks certain passives that we can then choose during team selection. Kinda like how we can already choose buffs for the Deadly Assault. If it's story-related, then it's fair and everyone can benefit from it. Like, could you imagine if the buffs in Deadly Assault you could only get if you rolled certain limited characters? Suddenly it becomes a lot more annoying, right? But of course, this is simply speculation, and this again was all for the 3.2 version of Honkai Star Rail. Zenless Zone Zero is still far away from that. But it is food for thought though. But if you would like to hear more yapping about the speculation on the Honkai Star Rail changes and how it could impact not just Zenless Zone Zero, but many of the miHoYo gacha games as a whole, there is a brand new episode of the Losing the 50 podcast that you can listen to, featuring myself and the regular hosts Average Luck Gamer and Kete the 7th, and special guest Razor CT. So if you want to listen to nearly 2 hours of yapping about all of these changes, feel free to give that a listen as well. The link to this will of course be in the description below. Otherwise, as always, thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, liking, commenting, and subscribing is greatly appreciated. And hopefully I will see you all on Wednesday for the Trigger livestream. Hope you all have a good week ahead of you though, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!